Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome, guys. So, here I have another objection from the Christian apologists. So, when we press them that, see, God cannot die, how can you say God died? They always come back and say, see, what do you mean God cannot do something? You're always saying God cannot do this, God cannot do that, God cannot do this. Who are you to tell God what he cannot do or what he can do? So this is the argument. So we say God cannot die, for example, or God cannot become a man. They're like, how can you say God cannot become a man? How can you say God cannot die? Who are you to say that? The funny thing is, what we are saying is not actually something strange to the Bible. God explicitly says that he cannot die. So we are just rehashing what God has already told us. That, see, I cannot die. I'm not immortal like you. I'm immortal. So I saw this argument by the apologist, I think Jay Smith or something like this. This guy was saying that, see, that God can do it because he loves us. So God loves us so much that he can do it. This is to show you, if you watched last video, I was talking about love. So they are like saying, see, God, the God of the Quran, he doesn't love people. That's why he cannot come and die for them. But our own God, he loves. So because he loves you, he's going to come and die for you. Can you see? So they are painting a picture like, see, God loves us so much that he can even die. Auzubillah. And the funny thing is, this is not even true. They don't even believe this, really. They are just saying it. Because God cannot die is not, see, let me tell you something. The fact that God is immortal, the immortality of God, is not something that he gained. It's not something that he developed along the way. No, it's an essential property. It's a property that only God has it. No one else has immortality innately, intrinsically. You see, immortality is for God alone. Every other person can die. Only God cannot die. Now, this essential property is not something you can just throw away. Like David Wood he also said this. He said, see, imagine God was a king and he wears a robe, but he sees his son is drowning. The son is drowning in the sea. So is he not going to throw the robe away and jump and save his son? So they think immortality is something you can just throw away and say, hey, I'm going to limit myself. Remember that word? Limit myself. No. Essential properties like God's knowledge is not something that can be veiled. Like God does not know something now. No. God knows every time. There's no time he doesn't know. God is all powerful. There's nothing that he cannot overpower. Everything is within his dominion. It's within his powers. You cannot say, see, God, there's something God limited himself and he cannot no. God is all powerful. We will never, what's it called? What's this word? We will never give this up for you guys, okay? This idea that because God loves you, then he's going to go against his own nature. Of course not. And guess what? They even say it along that video. After he said all this stuff about God, he said something. He said, see, the only thing God cannot do, God cannot lie. Why? Why don't you say God can lie too? Because you think, because he's, can't he lie before you so that he'll save you? No, of course not. God's nature is pure and mighty. He cannot give it up for you. He cannot become a man because he wants to show you love. God loves you without becoming a man. How about that? Who told you God has to become a man before he can love you? This is a ridiculous argument. So they also now make this argument towards the end. He said this. He said, see, God, he laid down his life. But only God can lay his life down and pick it up. And they thought this is a great argument. Like, see, everyone, only God can lay down his life and pick it up again. That is the point. You have missed the whole point. The whole point is that he cannot lay down his life. Do you get it? He cannot say, let me pretend. He cannot pretend. He cannot pretend to lay down his life. So they are talking about resurrection. We don't get the point. They are talking about resurrection. Resurrection can never apply to God. Never. Because only people that die resurrect. If you cannot die, you cannot resurrect. So I know what they are really saying here is they are using like the two natures, but it's nonsense because they jumbled it up. The point is, when we say God cannot die, they shouldn't even argue with us. They should say, yeah, God cannot die. Then we'll press them on saying, then Jesus died and you're saying it's God. Then we can go into that. But they want to be able to say that nonsense word that God can die. That is ridiculous. And when Allah talks about this in the Quran, the kind of things you ascribe to God with your nonsense communicatio idiomatum, reduplicative predication is nonsense. Don't ascribe nonsense to God. Something that is belittling. They even make some kind of strange comparison, like if me as a human being, I can eat. He said, see, me, I can eat, so your God cannot eat. I'm like, what? Why these kind of weak arguments from big apologists? Jay Smith and the likes, David Wood, they're making this kind of arguments about, see, my own God can eat. Even me as a human being, I have the power to eat, so your God cannot eat. And they think it's a point. Eating means you are hungry, you are limited, you are weak, so you need to eat so that you feel yourself. Why would God need to do that? This is just ridiculous, guys. So I just wanted to put that out there. So another weak argument from these people, and they will not really engage with the topic of when we ask them, God, can God die? They should be able to say no without batting an eye. Then we'll talk about the nature of Jesus later, why he cannot be God for that reason. And if you watch that video I made about the triad, the inconsistent triad, that's how you can get them. Once you lay those 3 arguments out, you get them with this. So, wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.